I used to believe that family was the one place where nothing could break you, where no matter how hard life became, there would always be someone standing beside you. I believed that with my whole heart. I was the one everyone called when something went wrong, the one who showed up without questions, the one who gave even when I had nothing left to give. When my parents passed away, everything changed. Not just for me, but for all of us. And somehow I became the one holding everything together. My younger brother had dreams bigger than his situation. So I helped him build something from nothing. I gave him money I could not afford to lose. I stayed up nights helping him plan his future. My sister wanted an education, and I made sure she got it. I worked extra hours, took on extra burdens, just so she would never feel limited. And when life hit them hard, I opened my home without hesitation. I told myself this is what love looks like. This is what family means. I never kept score. I never asked for anything back, because I truly believed that when my time came, they would be there for me too. But life has a way of testing the things you believe in. One morning, I lost my job. No warning, no time to prepare. Just a quiet conversation and a final paycheck. I told myself it was temporary, that I would bounce back quickly, that everything would be okay. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into something heavier. The bills started stacking up. The silence in my house grew louder. And for the first time in my life, I felt unsure. So I did something I had never done before. I asked for help. I called my brother first, the same brother I had stood beside when he had nothing. He did not answer. I called again and again, until eventually the calls stopped going through. Then I reached out to my sister. Her voice felt distant, cold in a way I did not recognize. She said she had her own problems, that now was not a good time. And just like that, I felt something shift inside me. But I was not prepared for what came next. The house I had lived in, the house I thought was mine, was no longer in my name. Documents I had trusted them with had been used against me, quietly, carefully, without a single word to me. Everything was taken, not by strangers, but by the same people I had given everything to. That night, I sat alone in my car. I did not know where else to go, because the place I called home was no longer mine. The world felt smaller, heavier, like it was closing in around me. I remember staring at my hands, wondering how something so strong could suddenly feel so empty. I kept asking the same question. Why? Why would they do this? Why would they take everything and leave me with nothing? The pain was not just about losing a house or losing stability. It was the realization that the people I loved the most had chosen themselves over me. And in that moment, I felt completely alone. There is a kind of silence that comes with betrayal. It is not loud. It does not scream. It just sits with you and reminds you that everything you believed was not real. Days passed, and I had to face a truth I never imagined. No one was coming to save me. Something changed inside me after that. It did not happen all at once. It was quiet, almost unnoticeable, but it was there. I realized that if I could survive that moment, then I could survive anything. I stopped waiting, stopped hoping, stopped looking back, and I started moving forward. I took whatever work I could find. Long hours, low pay. It did not matter. I reminded myself every day that this was not the end. This was just the beginning of something new. I saved every dollar. I rebuilt my strength, not just physically, but emotionally. I learned how to stand on my own, without expecting anything from anyone. And slowly, life started to shift again. I found better opportunities, met people who valued me, who respected me, but more importantly, I started valuing myself. I was no longer the person who gave everything away. I became the person who protected her peace. Years later, I was standing in a place I once thought I would never reach again. A stable life, a home of my own, a sense of peace that no one could take from me. And then one day,
My phone rang.
it was my brother. His voice sounded different, weaker somehow. His business had failed. Everything he had built was gone. And now he needed help. For a moment, time felt like it stopped. All the memories, all the pain, all the nights I spent wondering why, came rushing back. And in that moment, I realized something important. I was no longer the same person. I did not feel anger. I did not feel the need for revenge. I just felt clarity. I told him no, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I had finally learned that not everyone deserves access to your strength. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. I did not lose my family that day. I found myself, and that was worth more than anything they could ever take from me. And after that call ended, I sat there in silence. Not the kind of silence that once broke me, but a different kind. One that felt steady, grounded, almost peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I was not reacting. I was not questioning. I was not searching for answers. I already had them. Life began to feel different after that. Not easier, but clearer. I no longer carried the weight of expectations. No longer felt responsible for fixing everything around me. I started noticing the small things again. The quiet mornings, the warmth of sunlight through the window, the feeling of breathing without heaviness in my chest. There was a time when I thought healing meant forgetting, but I was wrong. Healing meant remembering without pain. It meant looking back at everything that happened and no longer feeling like it defined me. I did not hate them, and that surprised me, because for a long time, I thought anger would stay with me forever. But it did not. It faded slowly, replaced by something stronger.
Acceptance.
I accepted that they made their choices, and I made mine. I accepted that not every story gets closure. Not every wound gets an apology. And that was okay, because I no longer needed it. I began building a life that felt like mine. Not something I was sharing. Not something I was sacrificing. But something I was living. I created boundaries. Quiet ones. Firm ones. The kind that do not need to be explained. I learned to say no. Without guilt. Without fear. I learned that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary. People started seeing me differently. Not as the one who would always give, but as someone who knew her worth. And slowly, the right people came into my life. People who did not take, but gave. People who did not disappear when things became difficult. People who stayed. And for the first time, I understood what real support feels like. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It simply exists.
Consistently. Quietly.
Like something you can trust.
Sometimes I think about the past.
Not with regret, but with understanding. If everything had not fallen apart, I would have never rebuilt myself this way. I would have never discovered how strong I truly am. There is a version of me that existed before all of this. Someone who believed love meant sacrifice, who thought loyalty meant giving everything. And then there is who I am now. Someone who understands that love should never cost you yourself. That loyalty should never leave you empty. I did not become cold. I did not stop caring. I just became wiser. And that made all the difference. Because now, when I look at my life, I do not see loss. I see growth. I see strength. I see a woman who was broken in ways she never expected, and still found a way to stand back up, stronger than before. And if there is one thing I know now, it is this. Sometimes the people who walk away from you are the very reason you finally find your way. And sometimes, losing everything is exactly what leads you to everything you were meant to become. Time kept moving forward, and so did I. But healing is not a straight path. It does not happen all at once, and it does not stay the same every day. There were moments, quiet, unexpected moments, when the past would find its way back into my thoughts. A familiar smell,
A song.
a memory that appeared without warning. And for a second, I would feel it again, not the same pain, but an echo of it, a reminder of who I used to be, and everything I had been through. At first, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought healing meant never feeling that again. But I learned something important. Healing is not about erasing the past. It is about learning how to live with it, without letting it control you. So instead of running from those moments, I started facing them. I allowed myself to remember. But this time, I did not let the memories define me. I saw them for what they were. Chapters, not the whole story. I started writing new chapters, ones that were not built on pain, but on purpose. I tried new things, met new people, stepped into spaces I once felt too afraid to enter. And slowly, I began to recognize myself again. Not the old version of me, but someone new, someone stronger, someone calmer, someone who no longer needed validation from anyone. There was a confidence growing inside me, a quiet kind, not loud or showy, but steady, the kind that comes from surviving something that once felt impossible. I began to trust myself, my decisions,
My instincts.
my voice. For so long, I had doubted myself, questioned everything, looked to others for answers.
But now,
I understood. I was enough, just as I am. One evening, I found myself sitting alone, watching the sun slowly disappear. And for the first time in years, I felt something I had not felt in a long time.
peace.
Real peace. Not the kind that depends on everything going right, but the kind that stays, even when things are uncertain. And in that moment,
I realized.
I was no longer surviving. I was living, truly living. The past no longer had power over me. It no longer shaped my decisions or controlled my emotions. It simply existed,
As something that happened.
not something that owned me. And that changed everything. Because now, I was free. Free from the expectations. Free from the pain. Free from the version of myself that once believed she had to hold everything together. I did not need to be that person anymore. I could just be me. And that was more than enough. There is a strength that comes from starting over. A kind of strength that cannot be taught, only earned. And I had earned it. Through every tear, every sleepless night, every moment I thought I would not make it. I had earned this version of myself. And I was proud of her. Not because she was perfect, but because she did not give up. And as I looked ahead, toward everything still waiting for me, I no longer felt fear. I felt ready. Ready for whatever life would bring. Because now I knew, no matter what happens, I will always find my way back to myself. There comes a moment in life when you stop asking why, not because you have all the answers, but because you finally understand that some questions do not need answers. They only need acceptance. And that moment found me quietly. It was not dramatic. There was no big realization, no sudden shift, just a calm understanding that settled deep inside me. I stopped looking at the past as something that hurt me and started seeing it as something that shaped me. Every betrayal, every loss, every moment I felt alone, it all became part of the foundation that I now stood on, stronger than ever before. I started noticing how different I had become, the way I spoke, the way I carried myself, the way I no longer rushed to prove my worth. There was a calm confidence in me now, the kind that does not need approval, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. People could see it too. They treated me differently, not because I changed for them, but because I finally changed for myself. I was no longer trying to be everything for everyone. I was simply being true to who I had become. And that was enough. More than enough. I built a life that felt peaceful. Not perfect, but real. A life where I could breathe. Where I did not feel like I was constantly giving pieces of myself away. I surrounded myself with people
who respected me, who valued me, who showed up when it mattered.
and slowly, I began to understand something I had never fully understood before.
Family is not always about blood.
It is about connection, about trust, about the people who stand beside you, even when they have nothing to gain. And for the first time in my life, I felt that kind of connection. Not forced, not one-sided, but real. Sometimes I wondered, if my old life had never fallen apart, would I have ever found this? And deep down, I knew the answer.
No.
Because sometimes, you have to lose what you thought you needed to find what you truly deserve. And I finally had that, not just in my life, but within myself. A sense of worth that no one could take away, a strength that no one could break,
And a peace.
that no one could disturb. I was no longer searching. I had already found everything I needed within me. As time went on, the past became quieter, not forgotten, but distant, like something that belonged to another version of me, a version that I still respected, because she carried me through the hardest moments, but no longer someone I needed to hold on to. I had grown beyond her, into someone stronger, wiser, more grounded. Life did not suddenly become perfect. There were still challenges, still unexpected turns,
But the difference now
was how I faced them. I was no longer afraid of losing everything, because I had already experienced that, and I survived. I was no longer afraid of being alone, because I had learned that being alone is not the same as being lost. In fact, it was in those moments of solitude that I found myself the most. I built a relationship with myself, one based on trust,
respect.
and understanding. I listened to my own voice instead of drowning it out for others. I honored my own needs instead of putting them last. And that changed everything. Because once you learn to stand firmly within yourself, nothing outside of you can shake you the same way again. One day, I walked past a place that used to mean everything to me, a place filled with memories, both good and painful. And I paused for a moment, not because I felt hurt, but because I felt proud. Proud of how far I had come. Proud of the person I had become. I realized that I no longer needed closure. I had already given that to myself. Through growth. Through healing. Through letting go. And that was something no one could take from me. If I could speak to the version of me who sat in that car, feeling broken and alone, I would tell her this. You are stronger than you think.
This is not the end.
This is where you begin. Everything you are about to go through will shape you, but it will not destroy you. You will rise. You will rebuild. And one day, you will look back, not with pain, but with gratitude, because it led you here, to a life that is yours, to a strength that is unshakable, to a peace that is real. And, as I stand here now, I know one thing for certain. I did not just survive my story. I transformed it into something powerful, into something meaningful, into something that finally belongs to me. There is something powerful about reaching a place in life where you no longer feel the need to explain your journey, where your silence speaks louder than your pain ever did. And that is where I found myself. I was no longer carrying the past like a burden. I was carrying it like a lesson, something that shaped me, but no longer weighed me down. I moved differently now, not rushed, not desperate, not seeking approval,
Just steady.
intentional, at peace. There was a time when I thought success meant proving something, proving that I was right, proving that they were wrong, proving that I did not need anyone, but I was wrong. Success was not about proving anything. It was about becoming someone who no longer needed validation, becoming someone who could stand alone without feeling lonely, becoming someone who understood her worth without needing others to recognize it. And that is what I became. I started doing things for myself, not out of pain, not out of revenge, but out of love. love for the life I was building, love for the person I had become. I gave myself the things I once waited for others to give me:
respect, care,
understanding. And slowly, I realized something that changed everything. I was no longer empty. I was whole, completely whole, not because life was perfect, but because I had learned how to fill the spaces within me, instead of expecting others to do it. And in that wholeness, I found a kind of freedom that I had never experienced before. Freedom from expectations, freedom from disappointment, freedom from the need to hold on to what was never meant for me. I let go, fully, not just of people, but of the version of myself that kept hoping things would be different. And in letting go, I gained something far more valuable:
peace.
Real lasting peace. The kind that does not depend on circumstances. The kind that stays, no matter what. And that peace became my foundation. The way I lived, the way I chose, the way I moved forward. I was no longer defined by what happened to me. I was defined by how I rose from it. And that made all the difference.
Because now,
nothing could take me back to who I used to be. I had outgrown that version of myself, and I was never going back. When I look at my life now, I do not see the pain first. I see the strength that came from it. I see the growth, the resilience, the quiet courage it took to keep going. Even when everything felt like it was falling apart. There was a time when I thought I had lost everything. But now I understand. I did not lose everything. I lost what was never truly meant for me. And in its place, I found something real, something lasting: myself. There is a different kind of happiness now. Not loud, not temporary, but steady. It does not come from what I have, or who is around me. It comes from within, from knowing that no matter what happens, I will be okay, because I have already survived the worst, and I came out stronger. I no longer fear endings, because I know they are often beginnings in disguise. I no longer fear being alone, because I have learned how to stand beside myself. And that is something no one can take away. If there is one thing this journey has taught me, it is that strength is not about never breaking. It is about rebuilding yourself, again and again, until you become someone unbreakable. And that is who I am now. Not perfect, not untouched by pain, but unbreakable. And maybe that is the real victory. Not what I gained, not what I achieved, but who I became in the process. Because at the end of it all, this was never just a story about betrayal. It was a story about transformation, about losing everything and finding something greater, about being broken and choosing to rise anyway. And if you're listening to this and you feel like your world is falling apart, I want you to remember this. This is not your ending. This is your beginning. You are stronger than you think.
And one day,
you will look back at this moment and realize it was the moment that changed everything. Not because it broke you, but because it revealed who you were always meant to become. There is a quiet kind of strength that only comes after everything falls apart. It does not announce itself. It does not try to be seen. It simply exists, steady, unshaken, deep within you. And that is the strength I carry now. It took losing everything I thought I needed to realize what I truly had. It took being abandoned to understand the power of standing alone. It took betrayal to recognize the value of trust. Real trust, the kind that starts with yourself. I used to look outside for answers, for comfort, for reassurance.
But now,
I look within, because everything I searched for was already there, waiting for me to see it. There is something freeing about that realization. When you stop chasing, when you stop trying to hold on, when you stop asking why, and you simply accept what was, accept what is, and trust what will be, life becomes lighter. Not because it is easier, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. I let go of the need to be understood by everyone. I let go of the need to explain my pain, because I realized the people who truly see you do not need explanations. And the ones who never did, never will. So I chose peace. Over proving, over explaining, over holding on. And that choice changed everything. I started living more freely, more honestly. I allowed myself to feel joy again, without guilt,
To laugh.
without thinking about what I had been through,
To exist.
without the shadow of the past following me everywhere. And, in those moments, I felt something I had not felt in a long time.
Light.
Like I was no longer carrying the weight of who I used to be. I was simply being present.
Aware. Alive.
There is a beauty in starting over, not because it is easy, but because it gives you a chance to build something that truly belongs to you, something that reflects who you are now, not who you were before. And that is what I did. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece, with intention, with care, with understanding. I chose what stayed, and what did not. I chose who had access to me, and who did not. And for the first time, I felt in control, not of everything, but of myself. And that was enough. More than enough. Because when you have control over your own peace, nothing else can truly disturb you. If there is one thing I have learned through all of this, it is that life has a way of breaking you, only to rebuild you into something stronger, something wiser, something more aligned with who you are meant to be. We often fear the moments that shake us, the moments that take everything away. But sometimes, those are the very moments that give us everything we never knew we needed. I used to wish things had been different. I used to wish I had not gone through so much pain.
But now.
I would not change it, because every moment, every loss, every tear, led me here, to this version of myself. And she is stronger than I ever imagined. She does not beg for love. She does not chase validation. She does not lose herself trying to hold on to others.
She stands. Firm.
Confident.
Whole.
And that is something I earned. Through every hardship, through every moment I thought I would not make it, I earned this peace. I earned this strength. And no one can take that away from me. Sometimes people will leave your life. Sometimes they will hurt you in ways you never expected. But that does not mean your story ends there. It simply means a new chapter is waiting to begin. A chapter where you choose yourself, where you rebuild, not from pain, but from purpose, where you stop looking back and start moving forward with clarity, with strength, with understanding. Because at the end of the day, your life is not defined by what others did to you. It is defined by what you choose to become after. And I chose to become stronger. I chose to become whole. I chose to become someone who could never be broken the same way again. And that is the real power, not in avoiding pain, but in rising above it, again and again, until it no longer has power over you. This is not just my story. It is a reminder that no matter how dark things get, no matter how much you lose, you still have yourself. And as long as you have that, you have everything you need to begin again,
To rise again.
to become who you were always meant to be.
There is a moment in every journey when you finally stop looking behind you. Not because the past disappears, but because it no longer calls your name. And I reached that moment quietly. No announcement. No sudden change. Just a feeling. A deep understanding. That I had moved forward. Truly forward. The memories were still there. But they felt distant. Like something I had read in a story. Not something I was still living. And that was how I knew. I had healed. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. Enough to breathe without heaviness. Enough to smile without forcing it. Enough to wake up without carrying yesterday with me. There was a time when I thought healing meant becoming who I was before. But now I understand. You do not go back. You grow into someone new. Someone who carries wisdom instead of pain. Someone who sees clearly instead of blindly trusting. Someone who chooses carefully instead of giving endlessly. And that is who I became. I no longer rushed into relationships. No longer gave pieces of myself away, without knowing where they would land. I moved with intention. I listened more. I observed more. I trusted actions more than words. And most importantly, I trusted myself. Because I had learned the hard way that ignoring your instincts often leads to the deepest pain. But listening to them can save you from losing yourself again. I created a life that felt safe. Not because nothing could go wrong, but because I knew, no matter what happened, I would protect myself. I would not abandon myself the way others once did. And that changed everything. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, you stop allowing others to do it too. There is a strength in that. A quiet power that cannot be taken away. I became more selective. Not just with people, but with everything. My time. My energy. My peace. I no longer gave them freely. I gave them where they were respected. And where they were returned. And in doing that, I built a life that felt balanced. A life that felt real. Not built on sacrifice, but built on self-respect. And for the first time, I did not feel like I was losing parts of myself just to keep others comfortable. I felt whole, complete, grounded. And that is something I once thought I would never feel again. But here I was, living it, breathing it, being it. And that is when I realized this journey was never about what I lost. It was about what I gained. Strength, clarity, self-worth. Things that no one can ever take from me again. If you had told me back then, when I was sitting alone, feeling like my world had ended, that one day I would feel this way, I would not have believed you. Because in that moment, all I could see was the pain, the loss, the emptiness. I could not see the future. I could not see the growth. I could not see who I would become. But now I know. Sometimes you have to walk through the darkness without knowing where it leads. You have to trust. Even when nothing makes sense. Even when everything feels broken. Because on the other side of that darkness, there is something waiting. Something stronger. Something better. A version of you that you have not met yet. And that version is worth everything you are going through. I am no longer the person who was betrayed. I am the person who rose from it. I am no longer defined by what was taken from me. I am defined by what I built after. And that is something I carry with pride. Not arrogance, but quiet confidence. Because I know what it took to get here. I know the nights I cried. The moments I almost gave up. The times I felt completely alone. And I know that I kept going anyway. And that is what matters. Not perfection. Not having everything figured out. But continuing. Even when it is hard. Even when it feels impossible. Because every step forward, no matter how small, brings you closer to the life you deserve. And now, as I stand here, in a life I built with my own strength, I can finally say, it was all worth it. Every loss, every tear, every moment of doubt. It all led me here. To a place of peace. To a place of strength. To a place where I no longer need anyone to complete me. Because I am already complete. And if there is one thing I want you to take from my story. It is this. You are not broken. You are becoming. Becoming stronger. Becoming wiser. Becoming someone who will one day look back and realize that everything you went through was not the end. It was the beginning of the life you were always meant to live. There is a certain kind of clarity that comes when you have nothing left to prove. When you are no longer trying to show the world who you are, but simply living as that person. And that is where I found myself. I was no longer chasing anything. Not validation. Not approval. Not even closure. Because I had already given myself everything I once searched for in others. There was a quiet confidence in the way I moved now. I did not need to speak loudly. I did not need to explain my worth. It was simply there. In the way I carried myself. In the way I chose peace over chaos. In the way I walked away from anything that did not feel right. I trusted myself fully. And that trust changed everything. Because once you trust yourself, you stop second-guessing your decisions. You stop ignoring your instincts. You stop allowing people to treat you in ways you know you do not deserve. I became more present in my life. I started noticing things I once overlooked. The way the air feels in the early morning. The sound of silence when your mind is at ease. The simple joy of knowing you are exactly where you need to be. These were things I once took for granted. But now, they meant everything. Because they reminded me of how far I had come. There was no longer a need to rush. No need to force things. I allowed life to unfold naturally. And in doing that, I found a rhythm. A balance. A sense of calm that stayed with me. No matter what was happening around me. I stopped trying to control everything. And instead, I focused on what I could control. My thoughts. My actions. My boundaries. And that was enough. Because real strength is not about controlling the world around you. It is about mastering yourself. And I had learned how to do that. Through pain. Through loss. Through rebuilding everything from nothing. I had learned. And now, I was living. Not in survival mode. Not in fear. But in awareness. In peace. In quiet strength. And that is something I would never trade for anything. As I look ahead now, I do not see uncertainty the way I used to. I do not see fear or doubt. I see possibility. Endless possibility. Because I know, no matter what happens, I have already proven to myself that I can handle it. That I can rise. That I can rebuild. That I can begin again. And that knowledge is power. Not the kind of power that controls others, but the kind that frees you. Frees you from fear. Frees you from dependence. Frees you from the need to hold on to what is not meant for you. I walk forward with confidence. Not because I know exactly what will happen, but because I trust myself to face whatever does. There is a difference. A powerful difference. Between fearing the unknown and embracing it. And I have learned to embrace it. Because some of the most beautiful parts of my life came from moments I never expected. Moments that once felt like endings, but turned out to be beginnings. And that is how I see life now. Not as something to fear, but as something to experience. Fully. Openly. Without holding back. I no longer shrink myself to fit into places that cannot hold me. I no longer silence my voice to keep others comfortable. I stand in who I am. Fully. Without apology. Because I have earned that right. Through every challenge. Through every setback. Through every moment I thought I would not make it. I earned this version of myself. And I honor her. Every single day. By choosing peace. By choosing growth. By choosing to keep moving forward. No matter what. And if there is one thing I know for certain now, it is this. Your story does not end. When things fall apart. That is where it truly begins. And everything you go through. Every hardship. Every heartbreak. Every moment of doubt. It is all shaping you. Into someone stronger. Someone wiser. Someone who will one day stand exactly where you are meant to be. And when that day comes, you will not just look back. You will understand that everything you went through was necessary. Not to break you, but to build you into who you were always meant to become.